October 29, 2024, a day Valencia will never forget. As dawn broke, the city was unaware of the catastrophe looming on the horizon, the air heavy with anticipation and unease. A relentless storm swept in, transforming familiar streets into raging rivers and turning once safe homes into scenes of devastation and ruin. In a matter of hours, 229 lives were lost in Valencia. The city suffered billions in damages, and a once thriving community was left shattered, its spirit broken by the scale of the disaster. This was Spain's worst natural disaster in decades, a tragedy fueled not only by the fury of nature, but also by human error and neglect. For years, experts had warned of more intense storms and the growing risks of climate change, but the region remained dangerously unprepared, its warnings unheeded. The parched land, hardened by drought, couldn't absorb the sudden deluge. Rivers burst their banks, bridges collapsed, and vital infrastructure failed when it was needed most. The disaster was not just a freak event, it was a failure of foresight, a consequence of ignored warnings and inadequate preparation. In the aftermath, families searched desperately for loved ones amid the devastation, clinging to hope as they sifted through the rubble of their lives. The silence after the storm was broken only by the cries of grief and the steady whir of rescue helicopters as the city mourned together. 1 year later, the wounds remain open and the questions persist. Could this have been prevented? Who is responsible for the suffering that endures? The tragedy of Valencia is a story of loss, anger, and a political reckoning that would shake Spain to its core, forcing a nation to confront its failures and demand change. As Valencia flooded, President Carlos Mazón was at a long lunch, not at the command center. Reports of disaster came in, but he stayed at the table, missing crucial hours. This absence became the symbol of his administration's detachment and failure. The public's outrage grew as details emerged. Calls and messages about the crisis were ignored. His absence created a leadership vacuum with devastating consequences. Attempts to control the narrative failed. The image of a missing leader was seared into public memory. While citizens fought for survival, the government seemed paralyzed. This was the first and most critical error that would lead to Mazón's downfall. On that fateful day, as relentless rain battered the region, the emergency alert system, ES alert, remained silent, offering no warning to the people below. For hours, residents waited anxiously, unaware of the danger rapidly approaching. The government had the power to warn them, to urge evacuation, but the alert came too late, after 8 p.m., when darkness and floodwaters had already begun to swallow neighborhoods. By then, many families were already trapped in their homes. For dozens, the delay proved fatal, leaving loved ones stranded and desperate for help that arrived too late. Officials blamed the delay on strict protocols and technicalities, but for the families of the victims, these explanations felt hollow, mere words that could never bring back those lost. A timely message, a single urgent alert, could have saved lives and spared entire communities from heartbreak. The failure to activate ES alert exposed a deep breakdown in emergency response, communication, and leadership at every level. Meteorological warnings were issued, but they were not translated into decisive action or clear instructions for the public. Responsibility rested with regional authorities, and their hesitation, their inability to act swiftly, proved deadly for so many. In his resignation, Mazón admitted this was one of his gravest mistakes, a failure that would haunt him and the region for years to come. For survivors, the silence of their phones is a haunting reminder of a state that failed to protect them, and of the lives that might have been saved if only the cry had come in time. The true story of the floods is told by survivors. They recall the roar of water, desperate scrambles for safety, and impossible choices. Rosa Alvarez, who lost her daughter, became a voice for the victims, demanding accountability. Survivors now live with trauma, anxiety, and the loss of homes and memories. Many reported being left alone in the first hours. No police, no officials, just neighbors helping neighbors. This grassroots heroism stood in stark contrast to official inaction. The voices from the water are not just stories of tragedy, they are indictments. You left us alone, You failed us when we needed you most. Grief soon turned to anger, fueling not just a few protests, but an entire year marked by relentless demonstrations and urgent demands for accountability from those in power. What began as quiet vigils in the aftermath of tragedy quickly grew into massive, impassioned demonstrations. The people refused to let the memory fade, and they would not forgive or forget the failures that led to such loss. On the anniversary of the disaster, 50,000 people filled the streets of Valencia, their voices united as they chanted for Mazón's resignation, demanding justice and real change. At memorials, the pain was raw. Victims' families turned their backs on him, some shouting, "Asesino," murderer, making their outrage unmistakable. This was more than a protest. It was a public moral condemnation from which there was no recovery, a collective judgment that echoed through the city. Victims' associations, led by the tireless Rosa Alvarez, kept the pressure on, organizing press conferences and countering government narratives at every turn. When Mazón finally resigned, the response was not relief, but outrage. Activists called it painful and outrageous, accusing him of playing the victim instead of accepting responsibility. The people's verdict was unmistakable. His authority was destroyed not by political rivals, but by the very citizens he had failed to protect, and by the families who bore the deepest scars. The tragedy never faded from public memory. Months later, the pain and anger remained, visible in every memorial and every silent gathering. In the end, it was the fury and determination of ordinary citizens, not political maneuvering, that forced Mazón out, forever changing the city's history. On November 3, 2025, Mazón resigned, his face marked by defeat. He admitted mistakes, but also blamed rivals and institutions, seeking absolution. Critics saw this as a refusal to accept full responsibility. For his party, Mazón's resignation was a necessary sacrifice to stem political damage. National leaders had advised against declaring a national emergency, concentrating blame in Valencia. Mazón remains a regional deputy, protected by parliamentary immunity as investigations continue. Many see his resignation as self-preservation, not atonement. The legal and political battles are far from over. A year later, Valencia is rebuilding, but scars remain, both visible and invisible. Billions in aid flow, but many families are still in limbo, trust in institutions shattered. New protocols and promises have been made, but skepticism runs deep. The real test will come with the next storm. Will lessons be remembered or forgotten? Political fallout continues, with new instability and ongoing investigations. The tragedy exposed deep flaws in Spain's disaster response and political system. The 229 deaths were not just from rain, but from systemic failure. The memory of the victims demands more than words. It demands real